In yesterday's meditation, you introduced a concept with a very fancy name. Could you say the name, because I don't remember it?
AATA Vada and Vivata Vada. I very rarely use Sanskrit terms, as you know, but I wanted to relate what I'm saying to some of you I know who have studied the classical Advaita tradition. But yeah, Ajata Vada and Vivata Vada. Ajata Vada is a concept that we very rarely hear about. It's the contention that nothing exists or even seems to exist. Whereas, you understand when I say nothing exists, nothing really stands out from the background of being with its own independent existence. Ajatavada, nothing exists or even seems to exist, whereas Vivatavada, in reality nothing exists, but the world does seem to exist. And that is the level on which most teachings, or the highest teachings, usually take place.
So when you say that, the first thing you said...
Well, that's what yesterday's meditation and, to an extent, this morning's meditation, but particularly yesterday's meditation was, I was trying to somehow make sense of this, of what seems to be a complete contradiction with our experience. How can one say that from the highest point of view, not only that nothing exists, that makes sense, nothing stands out from God's infinite being with its own independent existence. I think most, if not all of us, understand that is not a denial of appearances. Okay, this is all an appearance, but what is it an appearance of? Infinite consciousness or God's infinite being. I think we're okay with that. But then to suggest that nothing even appears, well, no, what are we experiencing now? How can one say that from the highest point of view nothing even appears to exist when that obviously contradicts our current experience? So do we say that Gaudapada, writer of the Mandukya Upanishad, Ramana Maharshi, the Buddha, they were all wrong? No. So how can we make sense of this statement? So that's why I tried to suggest that from the infinite's point of view, and if the infinite is all there really is, then its point of view must be the only real point of view. From its point of view, the infinite cannot separate itself from itself and know itself, or indeed anything, as an object. It cannot stand apart from itself and know anything. It cannot know in subject-object relationship, because as soon as we divide into a subject-object relationship, both the subject and the object must be limited. The subject is limited and the object that it knows is limited. But the infinite can't cease being the infinite and become something finite. So from its point of view, that not only can there not be anything other than itself, but it cannot experience even the appearance of anything other than itself, because to experience an appearance, one must do so from a finite point of view. So in its pure experience of itself, there is no manifestation or even the appearance of any manifestation. Whereas from our finite, limited, localized points of view, there is most definitely the appearance of a world, even if we then question the reality of that appearance, as we do here. Now, there are no teachings, to my knowledge, that speak at the Ajata level. Or those teachings were just remains. They're not. They couldn't be teachings. There's nothing to teach there. That would just be silence. So the highest teachings that we know of, the top of the mountain teachings, are actually one step down from Ajata. The highest teachings teachings that, for instance, that we share here, admit that there is the appearance of a world. Why? Because that is our undeniable experience. So we start with the way experience seems to be. I seem to be a separate self, localized and limited to the body, and there does seem to be a world outside of myself, made out of something other than myself. So that's where we start. In terms of teaching, it's the highest teaching, although there is this understanding that is off the top of the mountain, which is never spoken of, because it's out of reach, in a way.
So what I don't understand, Rupert, isn't the AATA level what you help us experience every single time you take us back to that place during an exercise?
That's true, yes.
Because whenever you ask us, like, go to the experience of being,
yes,
and we report back what we experience, we do not experience 10,000 things.
That's right. That's the level we go
Yeah.
to. Yes.
So
that's the blind spot.
But isn't that just the core of the teaching? Why is it some sort of obscure, fancy schmancy name when it's just the...
Well, all Sanskrit names are fancy for English-speaking people. It's because it's not only referring to the experience that we have, the experience of the blind spot in which there is no manifestation. It's also a philosophy that says that doesn't even admit the appearance of a world. So you're right, as an experience, it's the very ordinary experience of the awareness of being. But it's the philosophy that accompanies it that is seems to conflict with our everyday experience. But you're right, the actual experience of the absence of manifestation, or even the appearance of that manifestation, is what I was speaking of this morning, the blind spot, just the pure awareness of being, luminous darkness, absolutely, yes.
Not only does nothing exist, nothing actually ever happened. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the two go together. If nothing exists, there's no question of anything happening. Yeah, so nothing ever happens. Nothing ever happens for the one infinite reality. Things seem to happen for the finite mind. And you get a taste of this here when you fall asleep at night. You glance at your clock, your alarm clock by your bed just before you fall asleep, and it's 11 o'clock. And you fall asleep and you have a dream, and you go back to India. You spend 5 weeks watching cricket. England retain the Ashes and bring them home, and you commiserate with your family. And then you come back to England, you go to work in the bank the next morning, and then you meet this lovely young man in the bank, and you fall in love, and you go out for dinner. I won't elaborate the story, but then you wake up, and you look at your clock, and it's 1 minute past 11. What really happened? Did anything really happen at a more relative level? So you get a taste. I remember I had an elderly friend years ago. He died many years ago, but he was dying, and I asked him, what's it like looking back on your life now? As you prepare to die, he just said, I look back on my life, it's like a dream. It's just like a dream. He was having a foretaste of this. Being remains untouched. Nothing ever happened to being. Nothing touched it. It touched everything, but nothing touched it. It's still pristine, luminous, free, empty, aware. It's never been tarnished by experience, never been hurt. It's never aged, never changed. He was having as his experience fell away, being began to shine more and more brightly in his experience, and its changelessness just impressed itself upon him. Everything else was like a dream in comparison to that. Previously he thought that his life was substantial and being was insubstantial. Now there's this exchange. Being was being magnified in his experience, and he felt that this was the one really substantial element of my experience, and my life was just like a dream. That it's in this context that it is said nothing ever happens.
So the AATA, is it AATA? I don't pronounce it.
Yeah.
So that level is that the what brings about the freedom in all experience and the sense of freedom, the openness and the.
Yes, it's what I think this morning I quoted Plotinus saying, because there is nothing in the one. It is because there is nothing in the one that all things are from it. It is because your TV screen is inherently empty that all possible movies can appear on it. Imagine if your TV screen was inherently pink. Only pink images. There'd still be a variety of images that were possible, but only pink images. There wouldn't be an infinite number of movies that were possible. Movies that did not contain the color pink would not show up on your screen. So yes, it's because the screen is inherently devoid of colors that all colors can appear on it. It's what William Blake said, all things possible to be believed are an image of truth. Why? Because truth itself is empty. Therefore, all possible beliefs, all possible ideas, the idea 2 + 2 = 4, plus the idea that 2 + 2 equals 5, are possible to arise in consciousness, because consciousness itself is empty of all thoughts, empty of all content. So it is free, to answer your question in the terms of your question, yes, it is free to take any appearance on account of its emptiness. Yeah.
So, and it just seems that even at the philosophical level, that idea is just beautiful. That
Absolutely
anything's possible, even
Yes.
if it's not nice, and that's the tricky bit.
Yes. The reason why not nice things appear, or for instance, evil. That's really your question. That so-called evil can appear in something which is inherently good, inherently that is love itself. It is because in order to manifest, the manifestation can only be perceived from a localized, finite point of view. The infinite by itself cannot experience manifestation. God doesn't know creation directly. It can only do so through the localized perspective of each of our minds. But in doing so, it seems to cease being infinite consciousness, seems to become a finite mind or a separate self. That's each of us. So if we believe that we are a separate self, then we think that others are others, that others are not ourself. And that enables us to behave towards them in unloving ways. You never behave towards somebody that you consider to be yourself, in other words, somebody that you love, in unloving ways, at least not consciously. We only behave unlovingly towards people that we think are other than ourselves, in other words, people that we don't love. So that is why. So the so-called evil is always from the point of view of the individual. It's the individual who believes themselves to be an individual, rather than the universal, that behaves in ways that express the belief in being an individual rather than the recognition of the universal. So that accounts for how evil is possible in a creation whose nature is pure love. They're not a contradiction.
So,
I discussed it. I tried to explain this to my father like 24 times, all through my 20s and 30s. His one contention with Christianity. How is it possible for there to be an all-loving God? And look what's going on in the world. Surely these two ideas are incompatible. God is all-loving. Look at what's going on in the world. Isn't that a flagrant contradiction? But no, it's not. If you understand this, what we've just spoken of.
yeah, I think I'm trying to understand. I didn't realize I had this question. It's just sort of we've gone into it, but I think I'm trying to understand the mechanism by which it's possible. I mean, even at a personal level, to just shine light on your experience and open it up, essentially. So, and that seems to apply at a wider level too. But is it simply by standing as awareness that the light reaches the darkness in time just through the increasing power of that light? Or do we have to go and actively take that light around, if you see what I mean? It's because those are two quite different ways of looking at it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's a beautiful question. In terms of one's own inner experience, all that's necessary is to go to one's being, to go to the light, and to recognize the light of being, and to allow that light to radiate through one's entire inner experience, thoughts and feelings, and outshine the darkness that is contained in our thoughts and feelings, so that gradually our thoughts and feelings are an expression of the light rather than the darkness. But then, when we go out into the world, then we take that light with us and do whatever we do in the world, shine that light around in the world, however each of us does that in our life. So internally it's just going to one's being and allowing the light of one's being, the light of God's being, just to radiate through the entire structure of the body-mind. But then in the world, we go out with that light in our actions and our relationships. We take it into our actions and our relationships.
If there are these pockets of ignorance that cause evil in the world, and that may be the current state, but is it at least theoretically possible that with this understanding it could reach all the places which it currently isn't, even theoretically?
Could this understand, this recognition of our own being take place in all people?
And basically pervade all of experience eventually.
Could there be a society that was founded on this understanding? Why not? Yes. It seems a distant possibility now if we look at what's going on in the world. But why shouldn't it be? We live in some ways in a very dark age. A world culture that is founded on the assumption of separation. That's the all-pervading world paradigm that dominates our culture, our institutions, and so on. Just in the same way that there were older civilizations that were dominated by the idea that the earth was flat, or that the sun went round the earth. These were old paradigms that now seem absurd from our point of view. In time, hopefully, this presumption of separation upon which our world culture is founded, future generations, future societies will look back on it as the Dark Ages. They won't be able to believe the ignorance that we consider just to be normal. How will that come about? Just by exactly what your previous beautiful question about how the light shines and shares itself, but by, first of all, individuals such as us, returning again and again to the light of our being and allowing that being to radiate through the body-mind, and then each of us taking that light out into the world in whatever work or relationships we engage in, and sharing it.